shocking Doha draw that has benefited Carlos Alcaraz. Stay until the end to learn all the details. The Doha draw brings surprises, Sinner with a difficult path, Alcaraz with a favorable draw. The French players are looking to make the most of their opportunities. 2 weeks after the end of the Australian Open, the leading duo of the ATP circuit returns at the Doha tournament. The draw for the Qatari tournament, which has belonged to the ATP 500 category since last year, was held this Saturday. Sinner not favored, Carlos Alcaraz, eliminated in the quarterfinals last year, will begin his week against Arthur Rinderknecht. He has been quite fortunate in the draw, as he is placed in Karen Khachanov's section, who is far from his best form at the start of this season. In the bottom half of the draw, Jannik Sinner will have plenty of work from the start against Thomas McHack, world number 31 and winner of the Adelaide tournament in January. And he could meet another Czech in the quarterfinals in the person of Jakub Mensik. As for the other seeded players, defending champion Andrei Rublev will begin against Jesper de Jong. He could face Hugo Humbert as early as the second round, if the latter manages to eliminate Fabian Marozsan. Rublev is in the section of his compatriot Daniil Medvedev, who will start against Zhongkang Shang. And a clash against Stefanos Tsitsipas could take place in the next round. Finally, Alexander Bublik will play his first round against a qualifier, while Yuri Lehecka, last year's semi-finalist, will face Jenson Brooksby. As for the French players, Arthur Fils has avoided a seeded opponent and will have a good opportunity to get through the first round against Kamil Myrzik. Giovanni Mpchi-Perricard has drawn Zizou Bergs and Valentin Royer, still without the slightest victory this year, will play against a qualifier. Tommy Paul has accumulated 5 consecutive defeats against the world number 1 and, during the Dallas tournament, admitted that he is happy not to have to face Carlitos. Carlos Alcaraz has become the bogeyman of practically the entire professional circuit. The Mercian, at 100%, seems completely unbeatable and, incredible as it may seem, there are players who are glad that the reigning Australian Open champion has taken a break after conquering the first Grand Slam of the year. One of those players is Tommy Paul. The American has suffered 5 straight defeats against Carlos when, a few seasons ago, he was one of the players who caused the Mercian the most problems. The story has changed considerably and Tommy, in the middle of the ATP 500 in Dallas, confessed that he is glad not to have Alcaraz in the draw. In Melbourne he constantly attacked my forehand, although it's true that I allowed him to have too much time to think, to execute his plan based on power. Honestly, I'm happy not to have him in the draw this week, Paul assured in the mixed zone. The American was one of Carlitos' victims at the Australian Open. Specifically, in the round of 16 where the result was 7-6, 6-4 and 7-5 in a tight match in which Alcaraz knew how to prevail at the key moments. Beyond Paul's relief, Carlos is already thinking about his next tournament. The Mercian announced his withdrawal from the ATP Rotterdam after winning in Melbourne. His return to the courts is scheduled for the Doha tournament, which will begin at the start of next week. Feliciano Lopez, former tennis player, Alcaraz can win on his own, he proved it in Australia. The Toledo native reviewed his career and spoke about one of the most talked about topics in recent months, the breakup between Alcaraz and Ferrero. The split between Carlos Alcaraz and Juan Carlos Ferrero has given much to talk about. And even more so now, just over a month after the separation, the Mercian won his first Australian Open and therefore the career Grand Slam he had long desired. Although now the one who has spoken is not one of the protagonists, but Feliciano Lopez. The former tennis player currently works as a tennis commentator and on the podcast El Cafelito he spoke about this separation that has not yet faded away. The breakup between Alcaraz and Ferrero, in Feliciano Lopez's words, "It seemed premature to me. I felt that Alcaraz still needed Ferrero a lot, even though I knew he is so good that he can keep winning on his own. The proof is that he went to Australia and won the Australian Open," Feliciano commented about the departure of Alcaraz's coach. Regarding emotional management, he believes that everyone is the way they are, everyone handles grief as best they can. I think Alcaraz remembered Ferrero because he is infinitely grateful for everything he has done for him, but he has not done so publicly. There is a lot of noise around and when a relationship is so intense, a little time will do good, he opines, giving that well-known advice, time heals everything. Feliciano coincided with the Big Three. We played in the best era in the history of tennis and no one can take that away from me. Having played against Djokovic, Rafa, Federer, Murray. If you faced Djokovic and played the match of your life, the next day Rafa was waiting for you, then Federer, he said about the golden era he experienced as the winner of 7 ATP titles. But he also did not want to fall into comparisons with the dominance of Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, saying that the era from 10 years ago was the best in tennis does not take merit away from current players like Alcaraz or Sinner. When people talk about tennis eras, You don't take merit away from anyone by saying that the best and most competitive era was the recent one. Feliciano Lopez is one of the most charismatic figures in Spanish tennis. He's shown on fast surfaces such as the grass of Wimbledon. He won Roland Garros in 2016 and was a true legend of the Davis Cup, winning 5 trophies with Spain. He retired in 2023, but remains linked to tennis as the director of the Mutua Madrid Open. Formula One is slowly getting underway with the pre-season tests in Bahrain, the first steps of the championship before it starts in Australia in just under a month. Fernando Alonso is there, not having the best time due to problems with his Aston Martin. However, in recent days he has had great support in the figure of Carlos Alcaraz, the best tennis player in the world, who has never hidden his Aloncismo and was able to learn firsthand about the sensations of one of his idols. He was also with Carlos Sainz. The tennis player stopped by Bahrain on his way to the ATP 500 in Doha that he will play from February 16 to 21. The world number 1, recent Australian Open champion and the youngest in history to complete the Grand Slam, made a stop at the Sakir circuit, where he happily posed for photographers with both drivers, greeting them in their respective team areas. It is not the first time he has been seen in a paddock, both in F1 and MotoGP, where he was very prominent last year at the Jerez Grand Prix, in which he was in charge of waving the final checkered flag. Although the one he has most often been seen supporting is always Alonso, with interactions on X related to typical fan mantras, as well as using the Asturians' iconic celebrations, such as those little birds he used to celebrate his victories at Renault and which Alcaraz used at the Australian Open. A strange union. With Cordoba, taking advantage of Carlitos' visit to Bahrain, he received a somewhat more unusual gift, as Their Highnesses Sheikh Nasser bin Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, part of the ownership of Cordoba CF of La Liga High Promotion, presented the Mercian with a shirt of the Caliphal team during the Spanish tennis player's visit to the Emirate. It is not the first approach of the world number 1 in tennis to football, as over the years he has been seen on many occasions at the Santiago Bernabeu. In addition, last year during Wimbledon he came out to train wearing the Real Murcia shirt, which he also supported this season during the Copa del Rey tie that the Granas played against Real Betis at the Nueva Condamina. Casper Ruud on the generational change. Alcaraz and Sinner hit harder than the Big Three. The tennis player has shared the court with the Big Three and with the new generation, analyzes the change at the top and points out a key difference. The power and speed of Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner have taken tennis to an even more physically demanding level. Casper Ruud has competed throughout his career against both the Big Three and Alcaraz and Sinner. And although comparisons are odious, it is inevitable to talk about the generational handover of stars. And who better to discuss it than the Norwegian, who has had the opportunity to play against all 5. The differences between the Big Three and the new generation. The tennis player has played several times against the 5 legends, although he has only managed to defeat Djokovic once and Carlos Alcaraz once. In an interview with Tennis Magazine he first spoke about everything he has learned playing against the greatest. The differences at this level are incredibly small. I have learned that you need patience, faith and acceptance at the same time. These final defeats hurt, but they also showed me that this is my place and that is important for my confidence in the future. Rafa always went for it with his forehand, but he had more spin on the backhand, and now we have Carlos and Jannik. Neither side is a weakness. It doesn't matter whether it's the backhand or the forehand, they crush it. Also, they move well physically. They move wonderfully. He compared Nadal's completely different game with the 2 current leaders of world tennis. Catching up with Sinner and Alcaraz, mission almost impossible.